Mm-hmm. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We'll begin today's session of Bhagavad Gita Shloka recitation and Mahabharata. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7. So since we recited 7, 8 and 9 for a couple of days, I think everyone is a little more familiar, so we can go at a slightly faster pace today. I'll share the screen. Please recite the verses along with me. You can stay in mute, but you also recite together. Okay. 7.1 Sri Bhagavanuvacha Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yathagyasya Tachrino. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. 7.2 Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyamya sheshatah yajgyatva neha bhuyonyaj gyatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. 7.3 Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. 7.4 Bhumirapo nalo vayuh kham mano buddhireva cha ahankara iti yamme vinna prakritirashtadha. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, altogether, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. 7.5 Apareyam itastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dhat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mine which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. 7.6 एतद्योनीनि भूतानि सर्वाणीत्युपधारया अहं कृत्स्नस्य जगतः प्रभवः प्रलयस्तथा. All created beings have their source in these two natures. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. 7.7 मत्तः परतरं नान्यत् किञ्चिदस्ति धनञ्जय मयि सर्वम् इदं प्रोतं सूत्रे मणिगणा इव. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. 7.8 रसोऽहमप्सु कौन्तेय प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दः खे पौरुषं नृषु. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. 7.10 बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्था सनातनं बुद्धिर्बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामहम्. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. 7.11 Balam balavatam chaham kamaraga vivarjitam dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshabha. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. 7.12 ये चैव सात्विका भावा राजसा तामसाश्च ये मत्त एवेति तान् विद्धि न त्वहं तेषु ते मयि. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am, in one sense, everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. 7.13 त्रिभिर्गुणमयैर्भावैर् एभिः सर्वमिदं जगत् मोहितं नाभिजानाति मामेभ्यः परमव्ययम्. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. 7.14 दैवी ह्येषा गुणमयी मम माया दुरत्यया मामेव ये प्रपद्यन्ते मायामेतां तरन्ति ते. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. 7.15 न मां दुष्कृतिनो मूढा प्रपद्यन्ते नराधमा माययापहृतज्ञाना आसुरं भावमाश्रिताः. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. 7.16 चतुर्विधा भजन्ते मां जना सुकृतिनोऽर्जुन आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभा. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. 7.17 तेषां ज्ञानी नित्ययुक्ता एकभक्तिर्विशिष्यते प्रियो हि ज्ञानिनोत्यर्थम् अहं स च मम प्रियः. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him and he is dear to me. 719. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudevah sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. 720. कामैस्तैस्तैर्हृतज्ञाना प्रपद्यन्तेऽन्यदेवताः तं तं नियमम् आस्थाय प्रकृत्या नियता स्वया. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. 722. सतया श्रद्धया युक्तस्तस्याराधनमीहते लभते च ततः कामान् मयैवाविहितान् हितान्. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. 723. अन्तवत्तु फलं तेषां तद्भवत्यल्पमेधसां देवान् देवयजो यान्ति मद्भक्ता यान्ति मामपि. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. 724. अव्यक्तं व्यक्तिमापन्नं मन्यन्ते मामबुद्धयः परं भावम् अजानन्तो ममाव्ययम् अनुत्तमम्. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. 725. नाहं प्रकाशः सर्वस्य योगमाया समावृतः मूढोऽयं नाभिजानाति लोको मामजमव्ययम्. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. 726. वेदाहं समतीतानि वर्तमानानि च अर्जुन भविष्याणि च भूतानि मां तु वेद न कश्चन. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows. 727. इच्छाद्वेषसमुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तप. O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. 728. येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता bhajante mam dridhavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Chapter 8, 8.5. अंतकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरं यः प्रयाति समद्भावं याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. 8.6. यं यं वापि स्मरन् भावं त्यजत्यन्ते कलेवरं तं तं एवैति कौन्तेय सदा तद्भावभावितः. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. 8.7 Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhya cha mayyarpita mano buddhir mame vaishyasya samshayaha. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8.8 अभ्यासयोगयुक्तेन चेतसा नान्यगामिना परमं पुरुषं दिव्यं याति पार्थानुचिन्तयन्. He who meditates on me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Arjuna, is sure to reach me. 8.14 अनन्यचेताः सततं यो मां स्मरति नित्यशः तस्याहं सुलभः पार्थ नित्ययुक्तस्य योगिनः. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 8.15 मामुपेत्य पुनर्जन्म दुःखालयम् अशाश्वतं नाप्नुवन्ति महात्मानः संसिद्धिं परमां गताः. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection. 8.16 sorry. आब्रह्मभुवनाल्लोकाः पुनरावर्तिनोऽर्जुन मामुपेत्य तु कौन्तेय पुनर्जन्म न विद्यते. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. 8.17 सहस्रयुगपर्यन्तम् अहर्यद्ब्रह्मणो विदुः रात्रिं युगसहस्रान्तां ते होरात्रविदो जनाः. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. 8.19 भूतग्रामः स एवायं भूत्वा भूत्वा प्रलीयते रात्र्यागमे वशः पार्थ प्रभवत्यहरागमे. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. 8.20 परस्तस्मात्तु भावोऽन्यो व्यक्तो व्यक्तात् सनातनः यः स सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. 8.21 अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्तस्तं आहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम. That which the Vedantists describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. 8.28 Vedeshu yagyeshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punyaphalam pradishtam atyeti tatsarvamidam viditva yogi param sthanamupayati chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. Chapter 9, 9:1. श्रीभगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमं प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. 9:2 राजविद्या राजगुह्यं पवित्रम् इदमुत्तमं प्रत्यक्षावगमं धर्म्यं सुसुखं कर्तुमव्ययम्. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. 9:3 अश्रद्धधाना पुरुषा धर्मस्यास्य परन्तप अप्राप्य मां निवर्तन्ते मृत्युसंसारवर्त्मनि. Those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. 9:4 मया ततम् इदं सर्वं जगद् अव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. 9:5 न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. 9:10 मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. 9:11 अवजानन्ति मां मूढा मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितं परं भावम् अजानन्तो मम भूता महेश्वरम्. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. 9:12 मोघाशा मोघकर्माणो मोघज्ञानाविचेतसः राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. 9:13 महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसो ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. 9:14 सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. 9:17 पिताहमस्य जगतो माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कार ऋक्सामायजुरेव च. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajurvedas. 9:21 ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालं क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रयी धर्ममनुप्रपन्ना गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. 9:22 अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो मां ये जना पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम्. But those who worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. 9:23 येऽप्यन्यदेवता भक्ता यजन्ते श्रद्धयान्विताः तेऽपि मामेव कौन्तेय यजन्त्यविधिपूर्वकम्. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. 9:24 Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tatve natascha vantite. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. 9:25 Yanti deva vrata devan pitrin yanti pitrivrataha bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajinopi mam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. 9:26 Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanah. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. 9:27 Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. 9:29 Samoham sarvabhuteshu न मे द्वेष्योऽस्ति न प्रियः ये भजन्ति तु मां भक्त्या मयि ते तेषु चाप्यहम्. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. 9:30 अपि चेत् सुदुराचारो भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यग् व्यवसितो हि सः. Even if one commits the most abominable action, If he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. 931. Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He quickly becomes righteous and attains lasting peace. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. 932. मां हि पार्थव्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्रास्तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम्. O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas and Shudras, can attain the supreme destination. 933. Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta rajarshayasthatha anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. How much more this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees, and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. 934. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam madparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So that's the end of the 9th chapter. Now we will read Srimad Mahabharata. So quickly, can somebody just tell me the headings of what all we covered in the last class? So I'll start to help you. So we read about Duryodhana's birth, how Duryodhana was born. Anything else you remember from the last class? Yes, Krishnashish.
We talked about Duryodhana poisoning Bhimsen.
Yes, Duryodhana poisoning Bhimsen. Okay. Anyone else? Anything remember from the last class? Rasapriya.
For the Pandavas come to Hastinapur.
Yeah. Why they came to Hastinapur?
Because Pandu died.
Correct. So we read about how Pandu died and then how the Pandavas came to Hastinapur. And after that, we also saw how being envious of the Pandavas, Duryodhan tried to poison Bhimsen. Yes, Madhava.
We also learned when Bhimsen went to Nagaloka.
Correct. And what happened when he went to Nagaloka? What was the result?
He became very strong.
How strong?
He had the strength of 10,000 elephants.
Yes, very good. Okay, I see 2 more hands up. Isha.
We also read about Duryodhana's birth.
Yeah, that I said in the beginning. Yes,
right.
we read about Duryodhana's birth. So I think we covered all the points, right? Anything remaining? Did you write Isha, did you type what all we covered? You didn't.
Not yet.
Okay, you should do it right after class, so it'll be a good recollection. Okay, so in this way we can quickly, instead of me going over the whole story again, we can just, that way you can also recollect what we read. So where did we end the last session? Chapter 2, how did it end? Pandu reconciled himself to the fact, no, we finished 1, 2, we finished. We did 3, 4, right? Okay. So 4, how did 4 end? Yeah, Duryodhana begins his evil schemes. Drona took the thumb. We read about Ekalavya, remember? Also. So that's how we ended. So we read about Dronacharya also. How Dronacharya, the Pandavas and the Kauravas were the students of Kripacharya, but Bhishmadev was happy with Kripacharya. And we also read about the birth of Kripacharya, how he was born to Gautama Rishi, remember? There was one Apsara, and then, yeah. So Kripacharya became the guru of the Pandavas and Kauravas. And then, but he didn't have celestial weapons. He didn't have those. So therefore, to make them invincible, right, very powerful in battle, Bhishma Dev wanted them also to learn how to use the celestial weapons. So therefore, he was looking for a qualified teacher. And then Dronacharya happens to come. And we read the whole thing and how he became the teacher. And now he's in Hastinapur. And then also we saw how Arjun was, and so many students were coming from all other kingdoms, not just the Pandavas and Kauravas, but many students were coming from, from Vrishni dynasty. They were also coming to study under Dronacharya. Of all the students, the best student was Arjun. And Dronacharya one night, what did Arjun do? In the night, once when he was eating and there was no light, he got the idea, if I can eat without any light, I can also practice. So in the night, he was practicing shooting arrows and hitting it at the target, even without seeing anything. Dronacharya became very pleased, and on that day he said, I will make you the best, archer, the best warrior on the earth. And then one day, Arjun saw along with the boys, when they were in the forest, they saw this dog, whose mouth was, it was kept open with 7 arrows. So they wondered, who did this? Who can do such a thing? And they found out Ekalavya, who introduced himself as a disciple of Dronacharya. Then Arjun was surprised because they were aware that Ekalavya had approached Dronacharya to become a student of Dronacharya. And Dronacharya said, no, I only accept Kshatriyas. But still he's introducing himself as a disciple of Dronacharya. So he went and told Dronacharya, you promised me that I'll be the best student, but looks like there's someone else. You have another student who's the best. So Dronacharya understood the situation. So they went and the whole story. So finally Ekalavya gave his thumb. So that's where we ended the previous chapter. Now we'll continue with chapter 5, the martial exhibition. Okay. Among Drona's pupils, Bhima and Duryodhana, deadly rivals, both became matchless in mace fighting. Yudhishthir was the greatest spearman and chariot fighter. Nakul and Sahadev were the best swordsmen, and Ashwathama showed the greatest ability at mystic weapons. Arjun, however, excelled everyone in all respects. So Arjun was not only the best archer, he was best at every weapon. He not that he knew how to use the other weapons. He not only did he know how to use other weapons, he was the best in all the other weapons also. He was the best archer, but he was also the best in using all other weapons. So he was number 1 in the whole world. Arjun excelled everyone in all respects. He became an Adhiratha, a warrior capable of fighting 60,000 other warriors simultaneously. Can you imagine? Without using any guns or bombs or anything, tanks, single-handedly, with his hands using weapons, he could fight off 60,000 warriors at a time. This only increased the envy Dhritarashtra's sons felt towards him, as well as toward his brother, the mighty Bhima. That even from childhood they were completely, envious of Bhimsen because of his strength. But now Arjun also. One day, Drona decided to test his students' abilities. He placed an artificial bird high in a tree. Calling together all the princes, he said to each of them, take your bows and aim for the bird's eye. One by one, I shall call you forward to shoot. The first to be called was Yudhishthir. When he had placed an arrow on his bow and aimed, Drona said, O prince, tell me what you see. Yudhishthir replied that he saw his brothers, Drona, the tree, and the bird. Drona asked him again and again what he saw, and each time received the same reply. Drona then reproached him and told him to stand down without firing his arrow. You will not be able to hit the mark, he said with annoyance. Duryodhana was the next to be called. When he was ready to fire, Drona asked him the same question. The prince replied as Yudhishthir had replied, and again Drona told him to stand by. One by one, the princes were called, and each responded to Drona similarly and was not allowed to shoot at the bird. Finally, was called. When he was prepared to shoot and was standing with his bow drawn in a semicircle, Drona said, Tell me what you see. Can you see myself, your brothers, and the tree? Arjun replied, I see only the bird. I cannot see you or my brothers nor the tree. Drona was pleased. He waited a moment and asked, If you see the bird, then please describe it to me. Arjun responded, I see only the bird's head. I cannot see its body. Drona felt his hair stand on end with delight. He said, Shoot! Arjun released the arrow, and it struck the wooden bird in the eye, sending it tumbling to the ground. With tears of joy, Drona embraced his disciple as Duryodhana and his brothers looked on in anger. Some time after that, Drona went with the princes to the Ganges to bathe. As he entered the water, he was seized by a fierce crocodile. Although capable of freeing himself, Drona cried out, "O princes, quickly, kill this beast and rescue me." The princes were confounded with sorrow at seeing their teacher held by the crocodile. They froze in fear, all except Arjun. He instantly fired 5 arrows which struck the reptile under the water and cut it to pieces. Its mouth fell open and released Drona's leg. Drona came to the river bank and took Arjun aside. He said to him, I wish to give you the greatest of weapons. Take from me the knowledge of the Brahmastra, the irresistible missile endowed with Brahma's power. This weapon should only be used against supernatural foes, for if released against others, it may destroy the very world. Drona then told Arjun that no one would ever become superior to him with a bow. He was now invincible. Seeing that the princes had become expert in arms and warfare, Drona went to Dhritarashtra and said, O king, your sons have completed their education. With your permission, they may now display their proficiency. Let me therefore arrange an exhibition. Dhritarashtra thanked Drona for instructing the princes and said, I envy those who will be able to witness the prowess of my sons. I shall attend the display with Vidura, who will be my eyes. With his assistance, please make the preparations, O best of Brahmins. Drona and Vidura then went outside of the city and selected a large, flat piece of land. After sanctifying the spot with prayers and offerings to the gods, Drona had skilled architects construct a great stadium. It had a vast central area and platforms rising on all 4 sides. Wealthy merchants sponsored the installation of thousands of beautiful seats carved from wood and inlaid with ivory and pearls. Rows of golden thrones encrusted with coral and gems were built on the royal platform. The stadium's sides reached up to the sky and were adorned with tall white flagstaffs bearing colored pennants that fluttered in the breeze. So, this is a temporary stadium that they constructed for that particular occasion. You see, in Mayapur, we see this all the time. Every year, when we have the Mayapur festival for Gaur Purnima for 1 month, then they just build up all these big, state like halls, like you where hundreds of devotees can sit nicely, and they have chandeliers and carpets and stage and sound system and everything. Very nice. And then after the festival is over, they just pull the whole thing down. For any festival, they just put up something like that. So they went and erected a whole stadium here for this occasion of exhibition of martial arts. Okay. And they decorated it nicely with flag staffs and flags, pennants. On an auspicious day, determined by the royal astrologers, the citizens entered the stadium, so thousands of them could sit there. It's a big stadium. The citizens entered the stadium, eager to see the princes display their power. Bhishma and Vidura, leading Dhritarashtra by the arm, walked at the head of the procession. They were immediately followed by Drona and Kripa, along with other members of the royal party, such as Bahlika, Somadatta, and other kings visiting from surrounding kingdoms. Bahlika is the brother of Shantanu Maharaj, is that right? Yeah. Okay. Somadatta is the father of
Purusharma.
Purishrava. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So Bahlika, Somadatta, and other kings visiting from surrounding kingdoms. The royal ladies came out of the city dressed in dazzling robes and ornaments. So ladies were also there, accompanied by numerous maids in waiting. The ladies ascended the royal platforms like goddesses ascending the holy Mount Meru. Crowds of citizens of all four castes thronged into the stadium and marveled at its beauty. Large sections were built of pure gold and were studded with priceless Vaidurya gems. It was adorned with countless garlands of bright flowers, real flowers, not plastic flowers. It was decorated with countless garlands of bright flowers and strings of pearls. The sound of people filling the stadium was like the surging ocean. Trumpets were blown and drums beaten, mixing with the blasts of thousands of conches. Can you even imagine thousands of conches being blown at a time? We have a little bit of experience during Janmashtami when they blow 3 conches at a time. But thousands of conches being blown at a time. And along with that, so many drums are being beaten and trumpets. And the excited talk of the people, and everyone is talking. So many of them are talking. It was like the surging ocean. Another thing is for the citizens, see, the first line says, crowds of citizens of all four castes thronged. So they would have separate sections for the Brahmins. All the Brahmins would sit in one place, all the Vaishyas would have another place, all the Kshatriyas another place, like that. When everyone was seated, Drona entered the arena with his son Ashwathama. He wore white robes and white garlands, and his body was smeared white with sandalwood paste. His hair and beard were also white, and with his powerful son, he looked like the moon accompanied by Mars. So, white dress, white beard, white hair, white sandal paste, and white garlands also. He looked like the moon accompanied by Mars. The noise of the crowd subsided as Drona entered. Drona then had a large number of Brahmins perform auspicious rites in the arena. The mantras echoed around the stadium. Expert musicians simultaneously played their instruments, creating a sound that pleased and calmed the audience who sat in expectation. They didn't have microphones, but somehow everybody could hear. I think they had some natural system, I don't know, that when you speak loudly, everyone hears. And with all this music and everything, but still, all of a sudden, when Dronacharya came to announce, everyone became silent. The princes then entered the arena, headed by Yudhishthir and striding like proud and mighty lions. The princes, all princes, the Kauravas, Pandavas, headed by Yudhishthir because he is the eldest. They entered like proud, mighty lions. They were clad in brilliant armors and equipped with every kind of weapon. Drona ordered them to show off their different skills. Beginning with Yudhishthir, the princes stepped forward one by one. They mounted swift horses and rode them expertly, wheeling about the arena and hitting both still and moving targets with arrows engraved with their respective names. So they would go around. So in the middle, there is a stadium with seats around, and there's a field in the center. So that particular warrior would, one of the Kurus, either the Pandavas or Kauravas, they would sit on a horse and go around, and there would be targets. Some are moving, some are still. But while riding on the horse, they are shooting at the target and exhibiting their skill to the audience. Thousands of arrows sped in all directions. Because it's not just one. Everyone, they're all going and they're shooting arrows, and on the arrows were the names engraved of that particular warrior. So you can recognize whose arrow it is by the name. Thousands of arrows sped in all directions, and some of the citizens ducked in fear. Maybe the arrow will hit me, so they just ducked. Others were fearless, their eyes wide with wonder. Sounds of excellent, well done resounded through the stadium. The prince's weaponry skills, horseback riding, and chariot driving were breathtaking. After displaying all these skills, they pulled out their gleaming blue swords and rushed, shouting at one another. They thrust and parried, adroitly dodging each other's attacks. The people saw with delight the grace, speed, and strength of all the princes. Drona then had Bhima and Duryodhana step forward to display mace fighting. The two heroes glared at each other and bellowed like furious bulls. Holding aloft massive iron maces, they circled, going like that, each with his gaze fixed on the other. As Vidura described the scene to Dhritarashtra and Kunti to Gandhari, the two princes aimed terrific blows at each other. Their maces collided with thunderous crashes, sending showers of sparks into the air. The crowd became divided. Some supported Bhima while others supported Duryodhana. Shouts of "Behold the mighty Bhima" and "Just see the powerful Duryodhana" filled the stadium. Drona realized that the fight was becoming too earnest, and he also saw that the people were becoming too excited. He told his son to step between the roaring rivals and stop them. Ashwatthama obeyed his father and, moving quickly forward, managed to separate the two princes. When Bhima and Duryodhana had stood down, still glaring at each other, Drona stepped into the middle of the arena. He stopped the musicians and spoke in a voice that resounded like thunder. Behold now Arjun's abilities. He is dearer to me than my own son. This son of Indra is incomparable at every kind of martial skill. As Drona spoke, Arjun entered the arena, clad in golden armor, with a large golden quiver of arrows on his back. The lustrous prince appeared like a cloud, reflecting the rays of the evening sun and illumined by a rainbow and flashes of lightning. If you are able to imagine that, I'll say that again. The lustrous prince appeared like a cloud, reflecting the rays of the evening sun and illumined by a rainbow and flashes of lightning, all at the same time. The invincible prince walked with the gait of a lion, and as he glanced about the arena, he terrified all those upon whom his eyes fell. A cry of joy went up from the audience. People blew conches and played musical instruments. This handsome youth is Kunti's third son, and he is the best of all virtuous men and the most powerful, some people said. He is the son of the mighty Indra and the best protector of the Kuru race. Others added. All kinds of praises were heard from the crowd. Hearing these, Kunti felt milk flow from her breasts, and along with her tears, it drenched her bosom. Dhritarashtra asked Vidura why the people were shouting so joyously. When Vidura told him that it was because Arjuna had appeared, Dhritarashtra said, "How blessed I am by Kunti's 3 sons. They are like 3 sacrificial fires, and Kunti is like the sacred fuel." But Dhritarashtra burned secretly within himself. Why had the people not cheered his own sons in this way? Was not Duryodhana Arjuna's equal? If only he could see what was happening. Vidura described the scene to the blind king. Arjuna displayed one celestial weapon after another. With the Agneya weapon, he produced fire. With the Varuna weapon, he produced volumes of water. With the Vayavya weapon, he caused a great wind to blow. And with the Parjanya weapon, he created a huge downpour of rain. Arjun created land with the Bhauma weapon. And with the Parvatya weapon, he made a hill appear in the arena. Then, by invoking the Antardhana weapon, he made all those things disappear. As the citizens gasped, the prince displayed all kinds of mystical powers. One moment he appeared as tall as a massive palm tree, and in the next moment he became as small as a thumb. In an instant, he went from standing on his chariot to standing on the ground a distance from his chariot. Drona had a mechanical iron boar run swiftly across the arena, and Arjun shot 5 arrows into its mouth as if they were one shaft. He shot 20 arrows into the hollow of a cow's horn, swinging on a rope around a pole. So there's a pole and there's a cow horn that is swinging around a pole. And Arjun shot 20 arrows into the hollow of that horn. After showing his skill with a bow, Arjun took out his sword and mace, demonstrating many dexterous moves with them both. The exhibition was almost over. The music had stopped. So you see, whenever they fight, whether it's here martial exhibition or even in the battle, when there is fight, there's music going on, right? So it's fun. Fighting is fun, even though they are fighting to kill the other person, but it's taken in that spirit. So the music had stopped because the exhibition was almost over, and the crowd's excitement had cooled. Suddenly, they heard at the stadium gate the sound of someone slapping his arms with great force and roaring like an enraged elephant. Obviously, some hugely powerful man had arrived. The people looked around for the source of the sounds. Are the mountains cracking asunder? Is the earth itself splitting apart? Others thought that some jealous god had come there, wishing to display his might. Drona jumped up and stood, surrounded by the 5 Pandavas, resembling the moon surrounded by bright stars. Duryodhana stood with his 100 brothers like Indra with the celestials. Everyone looked toward the gate. Coming toward them was a warrior who looked like the blazing sun. He had a brilliant coat of mail, which was a natural part of his body, and was adorned with earrings that shone like fire. The earth resounded with his steps, and he seemed like a moving hill. The crowd was motionless. They stared at the new arrival. Who was this? The handsome youth strode straight up to Drona. He bowed somewhat indifferently at his feet, then offered his respects to Kripa. Turning again to Drona, he spoke in a voice that could be heard in every part of the stadium. I am Karna. With your permission, O Brahman, I shall show skills equal to those of Arjun. Indeed, I shall excel all the feats displayed by Kunti's son. Watch them and be amazed. The crowd stood up together as if lifted by some instrument. They roared and cheered. Arjun felt abashed and angry. He clenched and unclenched his fists, which were covered with iguana skin finger protectors. His eyes seemed on fire as he glared at Karna. Drona nodded his assent, and Karna moved to the center of the arena. At once he began to show his skills. He matched every feat Arjun had displayed, and the crowd shouted their approval. When he had finished, Duryodhana went over and warmly embraced him. Here was someone who could stand against that haughty Arjun. The Pandava prince had been the center of attention for too long. Here was his equal. Duryodhana laughingly said to Karna, "You are welcome, O mighty hero. By good fortune you have come here today. Tell me, what can I do for your pleasure? I and the Kuru kingdom are at your command." Duryodhana had seen Arjun's anger. He smiled at the Pandava as Karna replied, "By your words, I already consider my desire fulfilled. I only wish for your undying friendship, but I have one request. Please allow me to engage in single combat with Arjun." Arjun stiffened and grasped his bow. The minute he had seen the obviously arrogant Karna, he had felt an intense rivalry. Maybe he would get the chance to end it immediately. Duryodhana laughed. "Enjoy with me the good things of life, O hero," he replied. "Together we shall reside in happiness." Arjun had heard enough. He interrupted Duryodhana in a thunderous voice. "O Karna, the path belonging to the unwelcome intruder or the uninvited speaker shall now be yours." Karna smoldered like a glowing ember. "O Partha, this arena is not meant for you alone. It is open to all heroes, including those superior to you. Why do you argue with words alone? Those who are strong do not waste words. Speak with your arrows, and I shall sever your head before your guru's eyes." Arjun turned to Drona, who nodded slightly. Fixing his gaze on Karna, the Pandava advanced for combat. Duryodhana embraced Karna, who went before Arjun, his weapons at the ready. Suddenly, the sky was filled with heavy clouds and bright flashes of lightning. Indra's great rainbow appeared overhead. The clouds above Karna, however, dispersed, and the sun shone brightly, lighting up his form. Dhritarashtra's sons stood behind Karna, while Drona, Kripa, and Bhishma stood behind Arjun. In the terraces, the crowd became divided. The royal ladies also could not choose between the two heroes. As they faced each other, Kunti was filled with horror and fainted. Vidur was surprised to see this and raised her gently, sprinkling her face with cool water. He asked her what was wrong, but Kunti said nothing. She sat, holding her head. How could she tell anyone the secret she had kept hidden for so long? Seized by fear, she looked at the arena and, feeling helpless, prayed silently. Just as the two warriors were about to duel, Kripa, who knew all the rules of combat, stepped forward and asked, "This son of Pandu is the child of Kunti and a descendant of the royal Kuru race. Let us hear from his opponent what is his lineage and race. Once he knows this, Partha may decide whether or not to fight." Kripa looked at Karna. Duels were fought only among equals. Karna blushed and said nothing. It was clear that he was not from a royal line. Seeing his discomfiture, Duryodhana spoke out. "Nobility does not depend only upon birth. Those who are heroes and leaders of soldiers may also claim nobility, even if not born in royal lines. But if Arjun will duel only with another king, then I shall immediately give Karna a kingdom." Without delay, Duryodhana arranged for a ceremony Right there in the arena, he sent someone to fetch sanctified water and sprinkled it upon Karna's head. You shall become the king of Anga. The crowd cheered as Brahmins chanted the appropriate mantras and offered Karna rice, flowers, and holy water. Karna sat upon a golden seat and was fanned with yak tail whisks. I mean, I'm just seeing how, he had to fight for that quickly. They arranged the whole ceremony and everything. Now he's a king. Yeah, Duryodhana is desperate. Karna sat upon a golden seat and was fanned with yak-tail whisks. He was deeply moved by Duryodhana's gesture of friendship and said in a choked voice, "What can I ever do to repay you, O king? I shall always be at your command." Duryodhana replied, "Your friendship alone is all that I desire." The two men embraced each other. And there's a whole scene going on. Everyone is witnessing what's going to happen next. The two men embraced each other, and the citizens became even more excited. Then, just as the duel between Karna and Arjun seemed about to commence, another man suddenly ran into the arena. He was trembling with age and supported himself on a staff. Perspiring and with his cloth hanging loose from his body, he moved quickly toward Karna. At once, Karna got down from his seat and placed his head, still wet from the coronation, at the man's feet. He stood up and said to the inquisitive Duryodhana, "This is my father, Adhiratha." Adhiratha had been present in the crowd and wanted to congratulate his son upon his coronation. He was a charioteer and was instantly recognized as such by both his dress and his name. He embraced his son tightly and shed tears of happiness. Seeing all this, Bhima jeered. "Oh, son of a charioteer, you do not deserve death at Arjun's hands. You had best take up the whip and guide a chariot. Indeed, you no more deserve the kingship of Anga than a dog deserves the sacrificial offerings of ghee meant for the gods." Karna looked down in embarrassment. Duryodhana rose up in anger from the midst of his brothers, like an infuriated elephant rising out of a lake full of lotuses. "Oh, Bhima, you should not speak such words. How can someone like this be of inferior birth? A hero's first quality is his strength and prowess. We have all seen Karna's power today." Duryodhana then named different gods and heroes whose births had been unusual. Drona himself was said to be born from a pot, Kripa from a piece of heath, and the great god Kartikeya from a clump of reeds. Even the Pandavas' birth was mysterious. Can a deer bring forth a lion? Look at this man, his natural coat of armor, and his marks of auspiciousness. I do not consider him to be a charioteer at all. Duryodhana gazed defiantly at the Pandavas. "If anyone dislikes my having crowned Karna, then let him step forward and bend his bow in combat." The crowd was roused by Duryodhana's heroic speech. They cheered and sat expectantly. Now there would surely be a great duel between two mighty heroes. But during Duryodhana's speech, the sun had set. The dispute would have to be settled another day. Duryodhana took Karna by the hand and led him out of the arena, which was now lit by countless lamps. The Pandavas also left, along with Drona, Kripa, and Bhishma. Then the citizens returned to their homes, some of them named Arjun and some Karna, while others pointed to Duryodhana as the victor of the day. That's how the martial exhibition ended. Kunti thanked the Lord within herself. As she watched Karna leave the arena, her mind went back to the day of his birth. She had only wanted to test Durvasa's boon. She had no idea the mantra would prove so powerful. Kunti remembered how she had been lying on her couch, watching the brilliant sun rise over the Ganges. What if she could call the sun god to her? The mantra had come to mind, and almost at once the blazing Surya was standing before her. Kunti had been amazed, then horrified, when he told her that he could not leave without giving her a child. "I'm yet a maiden," she protested. "What will everyone say?" Surya smiled. By his power, she could conceive a son and still remain a maiden. And so it had happened. The god left, and in due course the boy was born. Kunti had marveled at the baby's natural golden armor and earrings, the same armor and earrings she had seen on Karna as he marched into the arena. She recalled how that armor had shone in the morning sun as the boy floated away in his basket on the river. Kunti wept again as she recalled how she could not tell anyone she had given birth and how, blinded by tears, she had pushed the baby out into the flowing river. Adhiratha must have found the basket and raised her son. As Karna strode off with Duryodhana, Kunti led Gandhari back to the palace. Chapter 6. The Kauravas' hatred grows. It was now time for the princes to leave Drona's school. They completed their education, martial education. To complete their training, they had to pay their guru's fees by offering him dakshina. Traditionally, the dakshina was determined by the guru himself. Drona assembled the princes and said, "There is only one thing I want. You should take King Drupada prisoner, then bring him before me as your captive." The princes replied, "So be it." They knew of their guru's enmity with the king. Drupada and Drona had lived together as children under the rishi Agniveshya. Drupada had promised that when he inherited his kingdom, he would bestow half of it on his dear friend Drona. Later, when they had both grown to maturity, Drona went to Drupada and reminded him of their friendship and the promise. Seeing the poor Drona standing before him, Drupada had said, "O luckless Brahman, how do you consider me as your friend now? Past friendships are meaningless. Only equals can be friends. I am a great king, and you are an indigent Brahman. Do not try to invoke a long dead relationship." Drupada had then laughed at Drona and offered him a little charity. Deeply insulted, Drona had left Panchala, Drupada's vast kingdom, his mind fixed on revenge. The time for that revenge had arrived. Drona looked about at his accomplished students and knew that Drupada would soon regret his arrogance. The princes mounted their chariots and sped toward Panchala. Accompanied by a large force of horsemen, they soon arrived at Drupada's capital, Kampilya. Duryodhana and his brothers vied with one another to lead the attack. They rushed towards the city gates, with weapons raised. Sending up cries, they burst into Kampilya along its main highway, while the terrified citizens hid in their houses. Outside the city, Drona waited with the Pandavas, so only Duryodhana and his brothers attacked. Outside the city, Drona waited with the Pandavas. Arjun had suggested to his brothers that they not accompany the Kauravas. They will not be able to overpower the mighty Drupada. Arjun had said, "We should make our attack after theirs has been repulsed." Drupada heard the attacking Kauravas crashing through his city and came straight out of his palace, mounted on his huge white chariot. Roaring with joy at the chance for battle, he charged at the head of his army to defend the city. He showered his enemies with forceful arrows. His speed and lightness of motion were such that the Kauravas thought they were facing many Drupadas. He careered fearlessly in his chariot and entered into their midst, his bow constantly drawn to a circle and his searing shafts flying in all directions. The Panchalas sounded thousands of conches, trumpets, and drums, creating a noise that sounded like the roar of a tremendous lion. Drupada struck the Kuru princes with his arrows and sent them reeling. Seeing their king in the forefront of battle, the citizens came out of their houses to hurl clubs, maces, and other missiles at the Kurus. The princes were surrounded by thousands of assailants, and they felt oppressed and overwhelmed. They fled howling from the city with the Panchalas in pursuit. The Pandavas laughed. Arjun said scornfully to Yudhishthir, "Here come the proud Kauravas, put to flight by Drupada. They are strong in words only. It is time for us to fight. You stay here. I shall go with the others." Yudhishthir remained behind with Drona. His four brothers flew toward Kampilya. Bhima bounded along with mace held aloft. That means Bhimsen was running on the ground, while Arjun raced behind him on a chariot, and Nakul and Sahadev on either side. The Panchalas were waiting for them and had blocked the city gates with a row of elephants. Bhima struck at them with his club, struck at the elephants. With their heads smashed and covered in blood, the elephants fell to the ground like cliffs broken off by thunderbolts. Bhima spun like a furious tornado amid the Panchala warriors. Elephants, chariots, and infantrymen fell in the thousands. So, like Parashuram, right? He was going around with his mace, wheeling around. The Pandavas drove the hostile force back as a herdsman drives cattle. Arjun, keen to please his preceptor, released volleys of arrows at the immense Panchala forces. His straight flying shafts came in an endless stream and sped unerringly at the enemy warriors. Arjun resembled the all-devouring fire that appears at the end of an eon. Protected on either side by his two brothers, he felled thousands of fighters. Drupada raced to the head of his troops, and they rallied with lion-like roars. Led by their king, they mounted a powerful counter-attack against the Pandavas. Arrows, darts, spears, and clubs rained down on the four brothers. Arjun repelled all their missiles with his arrows. The Panchalas enraged him with their furious attack and fought with redoubled energy. His foes could not mark any interval between his pulling an arrow from his quiver and bending his bow to fire it. There was no interval. They couldn't see when he's taking the arrow, when he's shooting. It seemed like a continuous flow. All they saw was a constant stream of shafts speeding toward them. The mighty Panchala warriors shouted praises at Arjun for his prowess. The enemy is actually praising. While they're getting hit, they're praising Arjun's prowess. Along with his commander-in-chief Satyajit, Drupada personally rushed toward Arjun. Like the king, Satyajit was a warrior capable of contending with thousands of other warriors at once. He struck Arjun with 100 fierce arrows and sent up a great roar. Not tolerating the attack, Arjun pierced Satyajit with 10 arrows and simultaneously cut his bow to pieces with 3 more shafts. Seeing this wonderful feat, the other warriors cheered. Satyajit grasped another bow and immediately pierced Arjun's steeds, his horses, as well as his charioteer. Arjun again split Satyajit's bow, then killed his horses and smashed his chariot to pieces. Drupada came quickly to his commander's assistance. A powerful exchange of arrows and other missiles followed between the king and Arjuna. Gradually, Arjun overpowered Drupada. He shattered the king's bow, tore off his armor, felled his flagstaff, and killed his horses. Seeing Drupada confounded, Arjun threw down his own bow and took up a huge scimitar, like a sword, a small sword. He leaped down from his chariot and jumped onto Drupada's, seizing him and holding the sword to his throat. Bhima had meanwhile been wreaking havoc among Drupada's troops. Arjun shouted to him to withdraw. They had achieved their aim and captured Drupada. The troops saw their king's plight and fled in fear. Arjun then dragged Drupada onto his own chariot and rode back toward Drona. Haribol. When Drona saw the captive king, he smiled. So, O mighty king, do you now desire to revive our old friendship? It seems that your kingdom and wealth have become mine. Drupada squirmed and blushed. He looked down as Drona continued. You need not fear for your life, for I am a Brahmin, and it is my duty to be ever forgiving. Indeed, I have always cherished an affection for you since we were children. Drona then ordered Arjun to release Drupada. The king listened in silence as Drona continued. I still desire your friendship, Drupada, but how can one who is not a king be a king's friend? Therefore, I have decided to allow you to keep half your kingdom. I shall take the other half. Drupada was in no position to argue. He knew that Drona's martial power far exceeded his own, especially as he now had the mighty Kurus as disciples. There would be no question of defeating him in battle. Drupada nodded in assent. You are a truly noble soul to act in this way, Drona, he replied, summoning all his patience. Great personalities like yourself are always magnanimous. I too desire your friendship. Let us live peacefully, each ruling his own half of the Panchala kingdom. Drupada had Brahmins perform appropriate rituals and bestowed the northern half of his kingdom upon Drona, who then left with the Pandavas for Hastinapur. Drupada burned with humiliation. Somehow he had to avenge his honor. Absorbed in thought, the king returned to his palace. As they returned to Hastinapur, Drona rode on Arjun's chariot and spoke to him affectionately. He loved this prince as dearly as his own son, and he knew there was nothing Arjun would not do for him. Drona said, O hero, you are now the best of all bowmen in this world. Although you have repaid me by defeating Drupada, I will ask one more thing from you as Dakshina. You must fight with me when I come to fight with you. Okay? So he said, you have already repaid my Dakshina by defeating Drupada, but I want to ask one more thing from you. You can consider it Guru Dakshina or whatever, but I want to ask something else. When I come to fight with you, you must fight with me. Arjun was surprised. How could he ever fight with his teacher? Still, he replied without hesitating, It shall be so. I am always your servant. The Kurus had heard of a wonderful occurrence in Mathura, the city where Kunti had been born. Kunti had a brother named Vasudev, who had been imprisoned by the wicked king Kamsa. This powerful monarch had been viciously terrorizing Brahmins and other kings. Hearing a divine prophecy that Vasudev's eighth child would kill him, Kamsa imprisoned both Vasudev and his wife Devaki. He then killed their first 6 children at birth. But somehow, despite Kamsa's vigilance, the 7th and 8th children, Balaram and Krishna, had escaped death. By some mystical arrangement, Krishna had been carried away from Mathura and raised in Vrindavan, a small village of cowherds, by its leader Nanda. The great rishis said that Krishna was in fact the Supreme Lord and that it had been by his own divine arrangement he had gone to Vrindavan. The Kurus were amazed to hear from the sages that God himself had appeared in the neighboring kingdom of the Yadus. When he became a youth, Krishna had returned to Mathura and killed Kamsa with his bare hands. This tremendous deed astonished all those who saw it and confirmed for them Krishna's divine identity. Kamsa had struck fear even into the gods' hearts. There had been no earthly king capable of standing against him. But the young Krishna, still only a boy, and his brother Balaram had overpowered Kamsa's troops and generals, finally killing the king along with his evil ministers. The two brothers then became chiefs of the Yadu dynasty. They maintained a friendship with the Kurus in Hastinapur, taking a special interest in the welfare of their aunt Kunti and her 5 fatherless sons. Like that. Balaram also said by the rishis to be a manifestation of the supreme Godhead, became famous as a peerless mace fighter. At Drona's request, he agreed to train Bhima and Duryodhana in the skills of handling a mace. Thus, Balaram spent time in Hastinapur. While there, he learned of the fierce rivalry and envy the Kauravas felt toward their cousins. When Krishna heard this, he became concerned for Kunti and her sons. Therefore, he asked one of his advisors, Akrura, to visit Hastinapur and assess the situation and to see if he could be of any help. The Kurus received Akrura in friendship. Kunti was overjoyed to see him. She inquired about her kinsmen and friends in Mathura. Kunti especially wanted to know everything about Krishna, whom she accepted as the Supreme Lord. Does my nephew Krishna think of me and my sons? She asked. Does he know how I am suffering in the midst of my enemies, like a doe in the midst of wolves? Akrura asked her to tell him more about the situation in the city, and she began explaining everything. Kunti knew that Duryodhana and his brothers were always intriguing against her sons. The Kauravas could not tolerate the Pandavas' superior prowess. The humiliation they had recently received at Kampilya had made them even more keen to dispose of Pandu's sons. Kunti spoke to Akrura with tears in her eyes. Will Krishna come here to console me? I always pray to that all-powerful protector of the universe. Indeed, I see no other shelter for myself and my sons. Kunti cried out to Krishna in front of Akrura. He gently reassured her that Krishna was often speaking about her and had sent him to analyze the situation. Both Akrura and Vidura comforted Kunti and reminded her about her son's extraordinary birth. The Pandava boys were expansions of the gods. There was no way that the evil Kaurava princes could overcome them. Akrura remained in Hastinapur for several months. Then, when he felt he had understood the situation fully, he decided it was time to return to Mathura. Before leaving, however, he met with Dhritarashtra to offer some advice. Ultimately, the blind king was responsible for his sons' acts, and he could certainly check their behavior if he chose. Akrura said, My dear king, you have obtained the throne only because your brother Pandu passed away prematurely. Therefore, Pandu's sons have first claim on the throne. You should not discriminate against them in favor of your own sons. Akrura also advised Dhritarashtra to rule the kingdom strictly according to moral principles. He should treat all his subjects equally, what to speak of the Pandavas, his own nephews and heirs to the throne. Over attachment for one's close relatives is simply born of ignorance. Every creature in the world is born alone and dies alone. He experiences the results of his own good and evil acts, and in the end leaves the present body to accept another. The belief that one person is the relation of another is nothing more than illusion. Dhritarashtra listened in silence as Akrura spoke. He understood the implications of his words. Akrura had made it clear that the Pandavas' cause was righteous and that by opposing them he would reap only grief. Dhritarashtra bowed his head as Akrura concluded. By favoring your own sons, O Lord of the earth, you are acting out of ignorance. How then can you hope for any good result? Ignorance always leads to sorrow. Therefore, act virtuously and deal with Pandu's sons as they rightfully deserve. Dhritarashtra sighed. O wise one, your words are like the immortal nectar of the gods. I could go on hearing them forever. You have surely spoken the truth. But just as a person on the verge of death cannot be saved by nectar, so your instructions do not stay in my heart. Dhritarashtra admitted that he was prejudiced by affection for his sons. He told Akrura that he felt helpless to overcome that affection. Like Kunti, the king also understood Krishna's position. Surely everything moves according to the will of the Supreme Lord. No man can influence the Lord's will. Now he has appeared to relieve the earth's burden, and that will surely happen. What then can I do? Destiny is surely all powerful. Dhritarashtra had heard the sages describe how Krishna's mission was to destroy the large number of demonic kings who had begun to populate the earth. Pandu had managed to check them. But since his retirement, they had formed alliances and built huge armies, posing a constant threat to world security. Akrura could understand that Dhritarashtra was set upon a course that would lead to his ruin. By favoring his own sons over the Pandavas, the king would ultimately ignite a conflict between them, which would result in the destruction of the Kuru race. Akrura felt there was nothing more he could do. Dhritarashtra refused to accept responsibility for his acts. Taking his leave from the king, Akrura made his way back to Mathura. When Akrura was gone, Dhritarashtra pondered on his words. It was true that the Pandu sons were the rightful heirs to the kingdom. That could not be denied. It was especially clear that the eldest of them, Yudhishthir, was qualified to be the king. The king had seen how the prince was noted for his honesty, patience, kindness, and unswerving adherence to duty. Along with his brothers, he was a firm favorite of the people. The citizens had loved Pandu, and it seemed to them that he returned to live among them as his sons. Everywhere people were speaking of their desire to see Yudhishthir installed as the king. Dhritarashtra had heard of their talks. Now we have a qualified prince. Why should the blind Dhritarashtra remain king? Let us place the pious Yudhishthir on the throne. He will surely be a righteous and benevolent ruler. Dhritarashtra consulted with Bhishma, Vidura, and the Brahmins. They all decided that Yudhishthir should be installed as prince regent. The ceremony was soon performed, and the people rejoiced. Duryodhana, however, was seething. How had his father bypassed him to make Yudhishthir prince regent? When Bhima sneered at his distress, making it even more unbearable, he went with Karna and Dushasan to discuss with Shakuni a way to eradicate the Pandavas. Shakuni's eyes narrowed as Duryodhana and the others vented their rage. He pressed his fingertips together to think. The only answer, he said finally, is to get the Pandavas out of Hastinapur to a place where they can be killed without interference. We should somehow contrive to have them burned to death, making it seem like an accident. Duryodhana smiled, but Karna was not so sure. He did not like Shakuni's devious ways. Only cowards resort to deceit and underhanded methods. Powerful men favor open combat. If the Pandavas are our enemies, then let us march out to the battlefield and settle this dispute. Shakuni's lips tightened. Then he smiled slightly. My child, you are powerful but foolish. It seems you have forgotten Bhima's superhuman strength. And do you not remember the incident at Kampilya? All of the Kaurava princes, with you by their side, could not overpower Drupada. But with only 4 fighting, the Pandavas were successful. It is unlikely that we will win in a confrontation with those 5 brothers. Take heed of my words. Reminded of Kampilya, Karna was embarrassed. He let out an angry shout. They had been taken by surprise there. Drupada had been stronger than they expected. The Pandavas had the advantage confronting Drupada after having witnessed his actual power. Next time, if the Pandavas confronted the Kauravas directly, things would be different. Karna shook his head and left the room. Do what you will, but I cannot be a party to such cowardice. The cunning Shakuni had carefully assessed the situation. He pressed Duryodhana to approach his father and ask for the Pandavas to be sent away. He knew that Dhritarashtra would not refuse his son anything. Duryodhana nodded slowly. He trusted Shakuni's judgment. Together, they worked out the details of their plan. Then Duryodhana went to see the king. Dhritarashtra knew well of his son's hatred for the Pandavas. He knew that Yudhishthir's installation as the heir apparent had been a bitter blow to Duryodhana. The king thought about what he could do for his sons. He had spoken with Shakuni, his brother-in-law, knowing that Dhritarashtra never acted without counsel, had suggested that he seek advice from Shakuni's Brahman friend, Kanika. This Brahman, Shakuni had said, was an expert in statecraft and politics. Shakuni then personally brought Kanika to see Dhritarashtra. Kanika told Dhritarashtra that he should feel no compunction about rooting out his enemies before they harmed him. If he saw the Pandavas as his enemies, then he should destroy them without hesitation by any means possible. Because they were stronger than his own sons, a direct confrontation would probably fail. Better to employ some devious means. In the meantime, the king should continue to appear as the Pandavas' well-wisher. Then as soon as an opportunity arose, he should strike. Dhritarashtra thanked the Brahman for his advice and dismissed him. He sat alone in his chamber for some time. The thought of killing Pandu's sons distressed him. Perhaps there was some way they could be removed from Hastinapur. While they were present, his own sons would never be happy. So he's saying instead of killing, just move them out of Hastinapur. Because as long as the Pandavas are there, his sons won't be happy. Duryodhana complained constantly about his cousins. Now the monarchy was about to pass back to Pandu's line. Dhritarashtra had enjoyed his opportunity to occupy Hastinapur's throne as the world emperor. Although the firstborn son, and thus the first in line for the throne, he had thought his blindness had forever denied him the chance to be king. But in the years since Pandu's departure, he had become accustomed to holding the reins of power. It would not be easy to let go. As Dhritarashtra sat in his darkened room, Duryodhana came to see him. He heard his son's heavy steps approaching and his sighs as he sat before him. Dhritarashtra gently greeted the prince and asked what ailed him. I am hearing ill news of the kingdom, father. The citizens are growing restless. They want you to soon hand over the throne to the Pandavas. Why should we have the blind king now that Yudhishthir is grown? Why should we have the blind king now that Yudhishthir is grown? Are the words they utter. They care not for you or for myself. Duryodhana stood up sharply and began to pace, his gold ornaments jangling. As he strode about, he punched his hand with his clenched fist. Soon we shall become dependent upon the Pandavas. They will be the kings, and after them, their sons will inherit the throne. Thus our line will be plunged into misfortune. We shall become powerless and lose the honor we have long enjoyed. What could be more painful for us? I have been considering how to deliver us. Listen as I explain my idea. Duryodhana first suggested the Pandavas be sent to a distant city. On the pretext of sending them on holiday, they could be sent to Varanavat, where a splendid festival honoring Shiva would soon be celebrated. The town was noted for its attractions. The Pandavas would surely be pleased to visit it. Once they left Hastinapur, perhaps they would never return. That's all he said. Dhritarashtra immediately understood what was on his son's mind. How could he possibly agree? Pandu was always devoted to virtue, he said. He did not care for wealth. My pious brother was devoted to me. He gave me everything, including this wide and prosperous kingdom. How could I hurt his sons? So this is his thinking on. Oh, he said this. Besides that consideration, said Dhritarashtra, the people loved the Pandavas. They would be angered if the Kurus sent them away. Perhaps they would rise up against their leaders and remove them by force. And certainly Bhishma and the other senior Kurus would favor the Pandavas. Duryodhana was ready for this objection. Before sending the Pandavas away, the Kurus should try to win over the people by various means. By bestowing wealth and honors on them, they would gain their love and trust. Then, in the Pandavas' absence, it would be possible for Duryodhana to become king. The prince went on. Once my position is established in Hastinapur, Kunti and her sons could even return. Do not fear for their welfare. Dhritarashtra sat up and leaned toward his son. This very thought has been on my mind, but I have not spoken it because it is a sinful thought. I am still doubtful. How do you propose that we deal with Bhishma, Vidura, Drona, and Kripa? They love the Pandavas as if they were their own sons. Duryodhana smiled. Bhishma will remain neutral, as he always does. Drona's son is my staunch supporter. His father will never go against him. Drona has married Kripa's sister. Therefore, Kripa's support is assured. Vidura is the only one we cannot trust. He will certainly side with the Pandavas. But what harm can he alone do to us? Duryodhana implored his father to agree. If the Pandavas were allowed to remain in Hastinapur, he could not be able to live. After the whole thing, now he's saying, if you allow the Pandavas to remain in Hastinapur, I won't be able to live. His heart was burning and he lived in constant anxiety. Dhritarashtra was torn. He sat sighing for some moments. Finally, he gave his assent. Everything lay in the hands of Providence. What could he, a mere mortal, filled with desire and fears, do against destiny? The king called his servants and retired for the night. So we completed 17 minutes early. We can stop here today. Does anyone have any questions, comments, reflections? No? Okay. So we will end here. We'll meet again tomorrow at 10 o'clock.